2025. So following the model of the second Global Disability Summit, the Higher Council has decided to hold regional summit for the MENA region, preceded by 2 informative webinars. These gatherings aim to stimulate international collaboration and place emphasis on the regional specific needs and priorities that will ultimately lead to the establishment of sub-themes and commitments for the Middle East and Africa, selected countries in Latin America, selected countries in Asia, Australia. The webinar is co-partnered with the Jordanian Coalition of Persons with Disabilities. And also we are glad to have this webinar in collaboration with the International Disability Alliance and with participation from Germany, civil society organizations, international organizations, and other development partners, organizations of persons with disabilities, United Nations, agencies, countries, teams active in the region. The webinar will be for 1.5 hours, and we encourage you to actively participate in the questions and answer slots, but make sure to make your participation short and direct to the point. Do introduce yourselves, the organization, and please be specific with your question in order to keep the time for other participants to participate. Please keep your mics off and raise your hand by pressing the button to give you the floor for the speaking. For the first part of our agenda, I would like to welcome Dr. Muhannad Al-Azza to give welcoming remarks and introduction. Dr. Muhannad Al-Azza is the Secretary General of the Higher Council for the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and he's also Jordan representative in the UN Committee for the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Prior to his appointment at HCD, Dr. Al-Azza was also a senior advisor with the civic engagement component at the USAID CIS. He served as the chairperson of the legal committee for the Higher Council for Affairs of Persons with Disabilities. In this role, Al-Azza overviewed the drafting of a new law on the rights of persons with disabilities, number 20, for the year 2017, that entered into force at the end of August 2017. Dr. Al-Azza earned his bachelor's and master's of law degree, as well as his doctoral degree in criminal law and bioethics. He is a member of the steering committee for the Global Disability Summit, in addition to leading Jordan Task Force for the GDS. Dr. Muhannad Al-Azza, the floor is yours. Dr. Muhannad, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Ghadir. I just would like to say a few words in Arabic, then we continue in English. شكرا جزيلا للجميع.
I would like to thank all. We are honored to hold this webinar today, because for us this is a pivotal point as a coordinating body, not only for the MENA, but also for the South countries. I would like to encourage all to participate in the time for Qs and As, because this is going to be very useful for us to reflect the opinions during our meeting with the steering committee. I would like to highlight what Madam Alexandria said in the beginning, that we are providing simultaneous interpretation in different languages. And if you want to write it in any language, we're going to answer it.
I'm very honored to welcome you all for this second webinar. It comes as one of the series of our pre-regional, pre-summit events. The main objective for this and the last and the previous and the coming pre-summit events is to engage with the real experts and stakeholders persons with disabilities and their representative organizations about the key elements for the Global Disability Summit in order to reflect their views effectively in our preparations. Jordan takes its responsibility as a co-host for the Global South. We take it seriously. We take it also in a very, we are trying, of course, our best to take it in a very professional and participatory way. This is why we are conducting this series of the pre-summit events. And we would love to hear from you. We would love to also be able with you to contribute and to reflect again your suggestions, your views, in particular that now we are only like 8 months just away from the global summit. So we are getting really closer and closer. And we are planning to conduct or to organize a regional or it's a really global event, I would say, because we will invite our friends and colleagues from the Global South in November in Jordan to attend a pre-summit event in person, also in order to having, further consultations with the stakeholders. So this is why I do encourage everybody during the Q&A time to ask questions, comments, to request any further clarifications. And again, on behalf of our colleagues and counterparts and friends in Germany, BMZ Germany, and their partners, also on behalf of the International Disability Alliance, IDA, we do welcome you, and we are so happy to have you all here. And if you don't mind, as Ghadir said, since we both trying to interactively moderating this event, I would like now to maybe introduce our first session. Is that correct, Ghadir, about the themes, right?
Yes, Doctor.
So the themes, as my colleague Greta will explain, they are the core or one of main cores of the Global Disability Summit. So how the initial themes, they were identified, what was the process, and what do we expect maybe from the themes, how we are dealing with the themes in among the three co-hosts, and maybe other points will be clarified by our colleague Greta. Greta, she's managing the Global Disability Summit Secretariat, and she's, I would say, a hard worker and a real expert in this file, and of course in other issues, and she's representing the International Disability Alliance. Greta, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Muhammad, for your kind words and for the introduction, and thank you for having me here today to support this important piece of work. So as just mentioned, I will provide you with an overview of the process for selecting the teams and the priorities of the GDS, and also give you an overview of what is the current status of decision. And I will conclude trying to frame a bit what the next steps will be and what you can expect from the co-hosts. And I think after me, we will do a bit of a deep dive by two different colleagues on two potential topics for the Global Disability Summit. So the process for selecting the teams and the priorities for the Global Disability Summit in 2025 is at very last steps. And was informed by several OPD consultations, the majority of which were facilitated by the International Disability Alliance, but we also received inputs in the last few months from the Jordanian Coalition of persons with disabilities, and also OPDs in Germany. Between March 2022 and March 2024, 20 consultations were held in different countries in Africa, Asia, Europe, Latin America, the Middle East, and North Africa, as well as online, bringing together more than 400 people overall. The multiple stakeholders that were involved in the events included organizations of persons with disabilities, humanitarian actors, donors, the private sector, and regional development organizations. And during the consultations, OPD members and other stakeholders outlined several priorities that they thought should be touched upon and should be the focus of the current cycle of the Global Disability Summits. These priorities were then presented by IDA to the co-hosts and outlined in a report on consultations, which I will share in the chat box once I'm finished with my remarks, and which will also soon be available on the Global Disability Summit website. The reason that it's still not available is that we are restructuring the website. We will have it fully operational by early September, and it will include a section on resources where you will be able to download this document and many other. What the International Disability Alliance observed is that the recommendations of OPDs have outlined the growing need of utilizing partnerships when it comes to disability inclusion. And also of being more action-oriented and cross-sectoral, recognizing the need of fostering new partnerships between different stakeholders, and also stakeholders that may have not been previously engaged in the area of disability inclusion. So in line with these findings and the recommendations that were collected, the co-hosts started working on framing concept and working on a narrative for the Global Disability Summit, which could serve as a basis for outlining topics of interests. And we are currently in the very last steps of finalizing this document so that it can be shared publicly and it can be used both as a list of topics that will be addressed at the GDS, but also as an advocacy document to talk about the Global Disability Summit and why it's important and why we should be focusing on these topics. And we're also trying to frame the list of topics within the broader objectives of the Global Disability Summit to connect all of the different cycles. And also to connect the global event with the different regional priorities, which will be highlighted by the regional summits and other GDS-related events. To now briefly go on specifying what this framing look like and what these topics are, the co-hosts have agreed on 4 guiding principles that were outlined during the consultations. And these 4 guiding principles are: number 1, legal harmonization; number 2, collecting disaggregated data; number 3, promoting gender equality; and number 4, prioritizing underrepresented groups. The co-hosts are now finalizing a discussion on whether these principles should be used as a lens through which all of the topics can be looked at or presented, or if these 4 guiding principles should be used as cross-cutting issues when addressing any topic during the GDS. Additionally, we've also agreed on 4 pillars under which the entire GDS will be structured. And these 4 pillars are number 1, non-discrimination, equality, and participation; number 2, accessibility; number 3, situations of crisis and conflict; and number 4, social and economic rights. And once again, you will soon have a document outlining everything that I'm explaining. I know it's a lot of information, so we will make sure that you have all of this in different text and video formats so that you can properly communicate and read through it. Under each of the 4 pillars that I just mentioned, and based on the report that was written by Ida and the different consultations that I mentioned earlier, run by the European Disability Forum and the German and Jordanian Coalition of OPDs, the co-hosts have listed several topics under each of these pillars, and are now finalizing a concept on how to address all of these different topics during the summit in Berlin. And so how to frame the program based on these 4 pillars, and then use each session to talk about 1 or more topics. And just after me, we will hear about 2 of the potential topics under these pillars. So I hope that this provides you with more of a framing of what the GDS teams will look like and what the reasoning behind them was. I know we have a Q&A session at the end of this first part, so I'll be happy together with my colleagues from the Higher Council to respond to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Greta. Thank you very much for this introduction. If I might ask you all to turn on your cameras for 1 minute, just to take a group photo, then we can proceed for the overview of some selected GDS. Thank you very much. إذا ممكن الكل يفتح كاميرته لحتى ناخذ صورة لو سمحتوا.
Would you kindly open your camera so that we can get a photo of
Would you
each and
kindly
every one of
open
you?
your cameras in order to take a photo?
Dr. Mohamed?
Yeah, thank you, Ghadir, and thank you, Greta. Just before continue, I recognized that maybe we have some people who are really new and they did not maybe attend similar events before. Maybe they need just a few words about what is the Global Disability Summit, and I will give just a few words about what is it for those who are not familiar with it. Maybe few people, but it's worthwhile to say it. The Global Disability Summit, it's a global event. It's started in 2018 in London, and it's happening every 3 years. The idea, the ownership of the idea, actually, initially, it's the International Disability Alliance. The structure of this summit is that there are usually 2 co-hosts, one from country from Global South, country from Global North, and permanent co-host, which is IDA. The second one, it was in Norway, 2022, and the representation in 2022 was higher in terms of the level or the representation of the countries. So it was at the heads of states countries. For example, in Jordan, His Majesty King Abdullah, he gave a speech in the opening, he gave opening remarks in a video message in 2022. So now in 2025, it's gonna to be co-chaired and co-hosted by His Majesty King Abdullah, His Excellency the Chancellor, and the President of International Disability Alliance in Berlin. The summit is a great opportunity for OPDs, civil society in general, international agencies, governments, decision makers, in order to meet together, to exchange, and to discuss thoroughly the disability rights and disability agendas through main pillars, themes, which Greta gave us now overview about it, and the commitments which my friend Jose will give overview about it. I just wanted to give this overview about the GDS to make sure that we are all on the same page and everybody is aware about the GDS. Thank you very much. Over to you, Ghadir.
Thank you, Dr. Mohamed, for this briefing about the Global Disability Summit, and we hope that people will learn more as we go through the preparation for the Global Disability Summit on the website for the Global Disability Summit. I think, Greta, if you can share it on the chat so everybody can have access to it. Our next topic will be to deep dive in some of the selected global disability themes, which is the crisis, emergency, armed conflict, climate change. Dr. Mustafa Atiyah, who is an international consultant on disability inclusion and has participated in mainstreaming disability within the disaster risk reduction strategy and climate change action
Audio
plan.
now unmuted. Voiceover off.
Will give us more information about this important topic and why it is important for persons with disability. Over to you, Dr. Mustafa.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, go ahead, please.
So
Can you share your presentation, please?
Yeah, I mean, I have talking points that I have shared earlier. I don't have slides to share, but you can please feel free to share the talking points if you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. To my colleague, Dr. Mohamed Al-Azza, Secretary General of the National Council for Disability in Jordan, to colleagues on International Disability Alliance, and definitely I am welcoming here everyone participating in this webinar, talking about a very important topic, which is emergency crisis, namely as well, or in other words, disasters. And it's fantastic to always see the growing efforts globally to mainstream persons with disability into disasters. We'll start positively by talking about the advancements that we currently see in the Arab world when it comes to emergency, when it comes to emergency eradications. Definitely, we all know about the difficult events that we currently facing, whether in Palestine or in relation to the current war with Israel going on, but also to lots of other humanitarian actions and crises in Libya that we had, and in many other countries. Luckily, despite the multitude of difficulties that we, disabled people facing on receiving equivalent support to non-disabled people when it comes to emergencies. I'm talking here either prior to, during, and even beyond disasters. We also, we positively have many advanced policies, and I believe that the current legal framework of many Arab countries could be seen as a positive point. Many policies and procedures has been developed to be in line with the United Nations Conventions of Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which I believe, while it has widened the gap between the policy and practice, because we're still facing lots of difficulty, I believe that these development in policies has positive folds into making sure that a person with disability at least are able to fight and advocate for their rights. I also commenting, or taking the line from Greta, who mentioned that lots of cooperation and integration is needed between disabled people organizations or organizations of persons with disabilities, and the correlation that should be built between them, not only and other funding organizations, but also to build their capacities to learn how to talk about disasters and what are the mitigations and resilience and measures that should be considered for disabled people to be equally protected. I'm talking here actually as well while working as an international consultant with the United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction Arab Regional Office. And 1 year ago, we have examined a group of strategies, 5 countries, Bahrain, Qatar, Jordan, Egypt, and other countries, to understand the level of disability mainstreaming within climate change strategies in each country. And we unfortunately found, as you all know, that despite the global efforts going on at civil community level, governments may need more attention or may need more concentration to take care of disability mainstreaming in strategies. I'm not talking here only about cross-cutting the theme of disability across strategies and all policies, but also talking about measures and actions that should be taken as a practical level to ensure that that the inclusive indicators mentioned within SINDAR framework are able to be implemented at the ground. So I'm talking here about budget allocations, for example, which is one challenge that we always see to provide disabled people with reasonable accommodation during disasters. I'm talking here also about conflicted measures between health and a social model of disability in a way. COVID-19 was definitely an example. Myself, as a blind person, faced difficulty because we're always talking about social distances, but also we don't have measures for mobility and orientation to ensure that person with disability, person with visual impairment could be supported in case of emergencies and without conflicting with the health measures. The situation is definitely more difficult when it comes to Palestine. We conducted an investigation with lots of like activists and colleagues like Nijum al-Amal and other organizations in Palestine, and they reported lots of disasters happening because the absence of accessibility measures is negatively reflected on disabled people, unfortunately, dying only because they cannot get outside of the buildings when they hear the war like alarms or things like. So they are in a more difficult situations. So we conducted the situational analysis, and definitely we got the finding, one other finding related to the fragility of disability movement. Definitely, we have lots of nice initiatives going on, projects happening with lots of OPDs and their networks at the national or regional level, like the Arab Organization for Disabled People, and definitely other alliances. But despite this capacity building budgets, like enhancing the qualification of smaller grassroots level OPDs is really a must to ensure that they are able to engage with the current global discussions. And this is why the UNDRR, Arab Regional Office, in cooperation, hopefully with the National Council in Jordan, and definitely with the AODP, IDA, and all other stakeholders, trying in the current period to establish our own disability stakeholder group in the Arab region, to work in a cross-cutting theme or an intersectional manner with other stakeholder groups, not only to involve disability demands in other groups like gender or maybe science and technology, but also to be able to give a space for OPDs and their networks to represent themselves, to chair, to lead, to participate, or to co-produce their policies using definitely the rights-based approach, social model of disability, and a bottom-up approach. We are also drafted a regional guidance for disability inclusion within DRR, using the contextualization of challenges that facing the Arab world, in addition to all resources published globally, and definitely lots of interesting sources like the Global Disability Surveys and statistics globally that we can benefit from and utilize within our context to draft our all regional guidance, which would be available soon. Also for OPDs, national councils, and definitely other international organizations to commenting on, because I believe that the Arab world has lots of specificity in terms of language, in terms of culture, in terms of even attitudes, and maybe higher level of stigma, which all affecting negatively the mainstreaming of disability and the prioritization of their demands, as we said, either prior to or within pandemics and disasters. Definitely, the regional assessment that we have conducted discovered lots of other barriers when it comes to disasters. So we're speaking here about policy versus practice, as mentioned earlier, because the practices and talking with focal points in different countries and their efforts to work in climate change, always bringing an absence to the concept of inclusion, always bringing an absence to what are the specific risks that facing disabled people when it comes to climate change and disasters, why it's important to focus on disability inclusion. And lots of people doesn't think that there is a difference in the first place. And sometimes I feel that disability is left out some of the agenda, maybe during emergencies. I'm still seeing the language of ableism versus the language of social model of disability. And definitely, as a disabled person myself and other colleagues, are not definitely able to get outside of the buildings, or maybe to read all announced information in a reasonable accommodation matters as our non-disabled colleagues. Absence of sign language interpretation or braille materials or even easy read language is all measures that we lose in the Arab world, and definitely which affecting disabled people not being able to listen or to being informed within all announced information from governments. In the UK, a third of the population died in COVID-19 were disabled. And I'm sure in the Arab countries, we have tons of disabled people or persons with disabilities wouldn't be able to access services and maybe died as well. But the scarcity of data or desegregated data is also an important factor that we that we found. So definitely sustainable development goals focusing on desegregated data. Sendai framework talking about that. So I think we are urging governments to make sure that desegregated data in place, so we would be able to know the number of disabled people who are influenced, and therefore what measures we should consider to support them prior to and during and beyond disasters. Ghadir, it would be fantastic to know how many minutes remaining, because I don't want to use times of other colleagues as well. So
you have like 1 minute to wrap up, please.
Okay. I shouldn't ask then. Okay, thank you.
No, I mean, maybe Mustafa, you can, with your permission, Ghadir, you can continue, but you can try to like be a little bit, you know what I mean, like to utilize the time. But because I think in the next sessions, we will not take, I mean, much time in the declaration. So you can continue, Mustafa, and then we can move to Alia.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Mohammed. And quickly, definitely another finding that I think we need to focus on in the intersectionality between disability and other important themes, such as gender, such as other marginalized groups, elderly people, which is an important topic. Lots of discussions going on around persons with disability, but disabled women who may face, as it is the case outside disaster status, it is also the case more and more within disasters. So focusing on women with disability or elderly people who also got disabled as they like get older and older, it's important. So customizing reasonable accommodation for them is also important. So talking about benefits, and I'm sure that all of us know the benefits of disability mainstreaming in DRR, we're talking about accessibility and reasonable accommodation. And we always say that accessibility is useful not only for disabled people, sorry that I'm saying disabled people, not persons with disability all the time. I am maybe within the UK school, but to persons with disability. So we're talking about accessibility, which is useful to everyone. We're talking about co-production approach, which is we all call about participatory approach, bottom-up approach, listening to OPDs, and then focusing here on the OPDs and their networks at the grassroots level. I'm talking here about empowerment as an important theme, because we all speaking about empowerment, but I think we discovered that despite the discussions about disaster risk reduction and the inclusivity of it, there is somehow an elite language that we should think of, simplify, and making sure that it's accessible for everyone so people can participate and therefore feel the ownership and feel that they have empowered. I'm talking here about resilience, and I'm sure that you all aware of the importance of resilience as a concept. And finally, the social cohesion. Because of the time, I would just conclude by saying that we will be getting in touch with all of you soon, definitely with your permission to send you an invitation for conducting some online consultations with OPDs and their network to tell us what do they think and how the disability stakeholder network should look like. We have designed a draft TOR just to be shared and to build a flat hierarchy of a disability inclusion network that for the Arab region, that should be linked with other regions as well to link and intersect, and therefore listening more and more to persons with disabilities demands and their organization, and reflect into strategy, programs, initiatives, and action plans. I do apologize for talking a lot, and I thank you, Dr. Mohammed, again, and colleagues from IDA and the National Council in Jordan for the opportunity. Looking forward for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mustafa. Actually, here we are playing our, I would say, totally different roles. Usually, Ghadir is very flexible in terms of time. I am rigid, but now we are playing otherwise. And this is because why we selected these two themes, because we do believe that the disaster and risk situation, including armed conflict and climate change, they are really, I would say they are not well perceived sometimes. They are not really highly prioritized within the disability community. So we intended to select two themes which are really not at the top of the agenda for decision, not only for decision makers, but even for disability community. Now I will move, with your permission, to Alia, our colleague, our friend Alia Zreqat in the council. She's leading the International Cooperation Unit, and also she's a senior advisor for His Royal Highness the President of the Council. She has a short but really very, I would say, good presentation, and very, I would say, verbal presentation about.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Oh, Mustafa, can you please mute? If we can mute Mustafa, because the voiceover.
Dr. Mustafa, can you please mute yourself?
Or maybe Alessandra, you can mute Mustafa.
Yeah, go ahead,
Okay.
Doctor.
So yeah, so Alia Zreqat, she will give a presentation about inclusive tourism. Alia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Manan, for the warm words, and hello everyone. Good evening from Amman. I have tried sharing my presentation, but it seems that the system is disabled, not allowing me to do so. Can I ask for someone to share the presentation? Thank you. Can you please put it on presentation mode, if it's okay with you? Thank you. Now, can we go to the second slide? So as you've heard from Greta, from Dr. Mohammed, from Ghadir, from Dr. Mustafa, the themes that we're working on are themes, or topics rather, that have been decided or on the way to being finalized by the GDS. And for reasons mentioned by Dr. Mohanad, we decided to dive into inclusive tourism. And I thought to give the reasoning behind why inclusive tourism is an important topic for us in Jordan and for the GDS co-host, and indeed for the global disability community. Let's start with defining what it means when we say inclusive or accessible tourism. Inclusive tourism is essentially an approach to tourism development that ensures that all tourist facilities, all tourist destinations, products, and services are accessible to every single person, to all people with and without disabilities. It ensures that a tourism journey is barrier-free, easy, and uninterrupted. So essentially, it means that a person with a disability, regardless of their disabilities, regardless of the barriers they face, regardless of the challenges they have within the health condition, they can access from A to Z the journey they intend to make. Next. So why are we really high on inclusive tourism? We're essentially talking about the 1.3 billion people with disabilities around the world, 16% of the population being potential tourist customers. And what is the benefit when we say that? We're not just talking about numbers. We're talking about unique travel patterns, because essentially, when you think about it, people with disabilities travel longer, stay in a place longer, travel with more people, not just one person. They travel off season, I certainly do, and they end up paying more. If you've gone to a hotel, you'll realize that the cost of an accessible room doubles the cost of a standard single room. And this is the story of our lives all over. So we're talking about a benefit order that doesn't just talk about numbers. We talk about unique travel patterns, but we also talk about an impact on families, families with children, families who come with their children, with their young toddlers, with their baby prams, with their parents are also benefiting from this accessible experience. And we're talking about an aging society in Europe, in North America, and Asia, because statistics and studies say that by 2050, 20 to 30% of those societies will become aging societies. So we have to start now. We have to start talking about inclusive tourism within the development agenda. Next, please. These are some of the reasons that I just outlined, but perhaps also more importantly, let's highlight a bit the lost opportunities behind the lack of an inclusive tourist society or an inclusive tourist experience. So with people with disabilities, who are essentially, we are a microcosm of society, we make society more diverse, more versatile. So there comes multiculturalism and the innovation, not only in public places, but in workspaces, because people with disabilities, with the exposure over the years and the added value of assistive technology and accessible technology, they are speaking more, they're highlighting their voices, we speak more, we define what we need, what we require, and we say what works and what doesn't work. Plus, of course, the generic argument that we always hear, we create more job opportunities. So the innovation creates a more sustainable economic society where people with disabilities are part and parcel of such a society. And finally, it's good for revenue. Countries like Jordan, where tourism is a niche, in 2023 alone, we had over 6 million tourists coming from abroad. Imagine if the 1.3%, 1,300,000 people who are in Jordan with disabilities were part of that equation. We would have added up to almost 10 billion JDs from the revenue that Jordan got in 2023. So that is just an example. Next. So we've spoken about inclusive tourism as a topic in the GDS, and how are we trying to mainstream? How do we aim to mainstream this very important topic within the GDS? We have included it in what is known as a global multilateral initiative, titled as a working title, because this isn't by any means definite final, it's still a work in progress. But we have included it in a global multilateral initiative that the 3 co-hosts have initiated, Germany, IDA, and Jordan, as part of our commitment that we will be making at the GDS. The working title, as you can see on the presentation, is called Resilient and Inclusive Cities Hub. So the aim is creating inclusive and resilient cities for reasons that Dr. Mustafa has just mentioned earlier in the presentation, the increased disaster situation that we find ourselves in, and the fact that people with disabilities are often in these situations considered the crisis within the crisis, because the normal system often finds itself collapsing and unable to operate. So therefore, what we have done is we have created an initiative under this title, whereby we hope that there will be in-kind contributions by partners, whether be it coordination, collective action, advocacy, and the preparatory and exemplary work of the OPDs around the world. And we hope that after the initiative is launched in April 2025, that there will be financial contributions, not least by, of course, the co-host, but also by partners and other stakeholders around the world. I'll stop here and then take the questions and answer session as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you, Alia, very much. With your permission, we'll go immediately to Abdel Qadir. Abdel Qadir Suleiman, who is the Executive Director of the Jordanian Coalition for Persons with Disability, and he's also a representative of Jordanian civil society organizations in the coordination group of the GDS. Abdel Qadir, you have 5 minutes, over to you. Before you go, Abdel Qadir, before you go, if I may ask you all to drop your questions in the question and answer icon at the bottom of the screen, so that we can start our sessions for the questions and answer immediately after Abdel Qadir. Thank you very much. Over to you, Abdel Qadir.
مساء الخير. مسموع الصوت؟
Yes, مسموع، تفضل.
Okay, thank you. I will speak in Arabic. I prefer to speak in Arabic because many topics has been discussed here in
سوف
Jordan.
أتحدث. I'm going to be speaking in Arabic.
فلن أعتمد أن الائتلاف الأردني للأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة
In the alliance of PDs in Jordan, the sound has gone. Mr. Abdel Qadir, would you kindly open your microphone? The microphone is closed. Mr. Abdel Qadir, your microphone is closed, sir. We cannot hear you. Mr. Abdel Qadir.
واضح الصوت؟
Now can you hear me?
طيب هلا كنا نحكي انه الائتلاف الاردني للاشخاص ذوي الاعاقه مثل ما اشارت غدير هو
CD, as pointed out by Madam Ghadi, is one of the bodies responsible for persons with disabilities,
ومناقشه القضايا الاساسيه
and
بالقمه
we have
القادمه
discussed the main topics of
هلا
the
الائتلاف الأردني
GDS, the
عقدنا جلسات حوارية
Jordanian
مختلفة
Alliance
رئيسية
for
جانبية كانت أو كانت
persons
رئيسية
with
مع مؤسسات
disabilities
مختلفة،
had
مؤسسات
held a
الإعاقة،
number
التحالفات
of
الموجودة
meetings with
بالأردن، الشراكات،
OPDs
وبعض
and
الأوقات كانت بشكل فردي.
different stakeholders
وكان الائتلاف يعني ينتهز
individually
كل
or
فرصة
in a group form.
باجتماعاته
The
لمناقشة
alliance in all its
أهمية القمة ومواضيع
meetings had
القمة الرئيسية
discussed the
والتعريف عن
importance
القمة.
of the
هلا أنا بدي أبدأ من
GDS
هذه
and the
النقطة.
topics of the GDS.
يعني اجتمعنا
I'm
أكثر
going
من
to be
مرة، أكثر من 3
starting with
اجتماعات
this
أو
point.
4
We have
اجتماعات
held
خلال
more
هذا
than
العام
3 or 4
لمناقشة
meetings in
المواضيع الرئيسية التي تهم
2024 to
الأشخاص ذوي
discuss
الإعاقة
the
ومؤسساتهم
main
كأوبيديز موجودين
topics
بالأردن
of
وخارج
the
الأردن. كان هناك
persons with
التقاء
disabilities in
ما بين
Jordan or
النقاط
outside
اللي
of it.
نقدمها
We have looked
والمشاورات
into
اللي
the
كانت
topics
تقوم بها
of the
الحكومات
summit, and we have looked
على الجهتين.
into the consultant
الجهة
meetings
الأولى
held
عندما
by the
نلتقي مع
government
مؤسسات الإعاقة في
when we
الأردن
meet with the OPDs in
تناولنا المواضيع
Jordan.
الرئيسية التي
We have
طرحت
discussed
من
the
اللجنة
main
أو
topics
التي
given
تبنيناها
by
بعرضها
the steering committee
بالملتقى أو
and which we have
منتدى
adopted
منظمات الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة في
in
اليوم
our
الأول القمة.
meetings.
بصراحة المواضيع هي عديدة وطويلة،
Honestly,
بس
the
اعتمدنا فيها
topics
بالنقاش من خلال
are
آلية النقاش
numerous
ركائز
and rich,
أساسية
and we
نعتمد
hope
عليها
that
في آلية
we
الحوار
discuss
ونعتمد
it
عليها
with
في
the
آلية جمع المعلومات.
stakeholders, the
ومثل ما أشارت
OPDs
جريتا راح
and
يكون في عندنا
international
استبيان
organizations.
أيضا
And
بعد
as
طرح
Madam
الاستبيان
Greta,
أونلاين من قبل
there's going to
التحالف
be a
الدولي للإعاقة
questionnaire and a
البعيدة.
survey which
راح
is
يتم
going to be
نقاش
posted
مرة أخرى مع
online,
المؤسسات
and we're
وتعريفهم
going to
بالاستبيان
discuss
وأهمية
with the
اختيار العناوين
OPDs
بدقة، لأن العناوين هي
again
طويلة
the
التي يتم
survey,
طرحها
and
يعني
we're
كان
going to
مع
be
الأشخاص ذوي
explaining
الإعاقة
the
أو مع
survey to them,
التحالف الدولي للإعاقة أو مع
and
المؤسسات الحكومية
we are
كهوست
going to
المعنيين
hold meetings with the
بالقمة والمنتدى.
IDA and with different
اجتمعنا أكثر
OPDs
مرة
and different
كما نوهت،
bodies
وكان آخر لقاء
relevant
بمشروع
to
بريدج
the
الذي تقوم
Global
به الأيضا
Disability
بالأردن.
Summit. I
خصصنا
have
يوم كامل
pointed
لموضوع
out
القمة
that there
ولمناقشة
is a
القضايا
project
الرئيسية
held
التي
by
تهم
Bridge
الأشخاص ذوي الإعاقة
in Jordan
ومؤسساتهم.
for people with
الركائز
disabilities.
تقريبا معظمها اجتمع
The
عند
main
تعزيز المساواة،
pillars
تعزيز
were
جمع البيانات
focused
الشاملة
on
والأطر القانونية والتأكد من إدراج
equality
ذوي
and
الإعاقة بشكل
also
عام في
legal
العمل الإنساني في حالات
representation
الأزمات.
and
هلا
how to
مثل ما
deal
حكينا
with
تقاطعت أهدافنا مع
with
أهداف
persons with
الحكومة.
disabilities in times of
اجتمعنا مرة أو
disaster.
مرتين مع الحكومة
We've held
وتناقشنا
2
تبادلنا الآراء
meetings
حول
with the
الأهميات
government bodies,
والأولويات
and
التي
we've
تهم
exchanged
الجانب
point
الحكومي
of
من جهة
views of
والتي تهم مؤسسات
the
الأشخاص ذوي
topics
الإعاقة.
of interest
النقاش كان
of
طويل.
people with
توصلنا إلى
persons
5
with
نقاط رئيسية
disabilities,
مع منظمات
and we
المجتمع
came up
المدني،
with
وتحتها
5
يندرج العديد
points
من
in
النقاط.
our
إحنا ما
meeting with the
حاولنا
NGOs and
بطريقة أو
civil
بأخرى
society
لم نحاول أن تكون
organizations.
العناوين
We have
جافة، بس أن
tried
يكون هناك
to make our
نقاش
topics
حول العناوين الرئيسية
rich,
للموضوع، باعتبار أن الاستبيان إلى الآن
built upon
لم يتم
the
إطلاقه من قبل
pillars
العائدة.
of the
فالعناوين الرئيسية التي تم
GDS, and
نقاشها
the
هي
main topics
تناولت
discussed had dealt
المواضيع التي تتقاطع أيضا
with
مع
the
الأهداف
main
الإنمائية
topics
الأهداف
that
التنمية المستدامة وتتقاطع مع الاتفاق
intersects
الإداري.
with the
كان
sustainable
إمكانية الوصول هو
development
العنوان الرئيسي.
goals.
طبعا إمكانية الوصول
And
إذا بدنا نفصل فيه هو بيرتبط بأكثر من مادة
also
وبأكثر من هدف من
accessibility
أهداف
was one of
القمة
the main
وبأكثر
topics,
من محور من محاور
and
القمة الرئيسية.
it is an
العنوان
intersectional
الثاني
topic.
تناول بناء القدرات،
And
تعزيز
also
الأطر
we have
القانونية
discussed
الاتفاقية. أكدت
capacity
مؤسسات الأردن
buildings,
على أهمية التعاون
and
الدولي والتمكين
the
الاقتصادي.
Jordanian
هلا من ضمن هاي
OPDs
العناوين
had
الرئيسية
highlighted
الخمسة
the
الرئيسية
importance
شملت
of
طبعا العديد من العناوين:
financial
التعليم الدامج،
empowerment
الحماية
of
الاجتماعية،
persons with
العيش المستقل أو
disabilities,
الأهلية
and
القانونية،
also
بناء
we've
القدرات،
discussed
العمل، التمكين، الوصول
inclusive
للمعلومات، المشاركة
education,
السياسية والبنية
inclusive
التحتية، التكنولوجيا
employment,
المساعدة والأمن
and
الغذائي
assistive
والتعاون الدولي،
technology,
وآخرها وليس
food
آخرها
security,
هو
and cooperation between the
التهيئة البيئية
OPDs, and
للأماكن السياحية
also
وضرورة أن يكون هناك معالجة رئيسية قبل طرح
inclusive
أي موضوع عن موضوع
tourism,
إمكانية
and
الوصول. إمكانية
also
الوصول بموضوع
the good
السياحة الدامجة تم
representation
نقاشه
of OPDs and
بنقاش طويل مع
persons with
المستفيد. هل نحن أمام
disabilities.
نحن
We
بالأردن أمام
have
تحدي في
discussed
موضوع
such matters
السياحة الميسرة أو
exhaustively, and we have
التهيئة
discussed
البيئية للأماكن
also
السياحية. طبعا ناقشنا
inclusive tourism.
بتفاصيل طويلة أهمية السياحة
We have
الدامجة، أهمية
discussed
توفير فرص عمل، أهمية
inclusive
أن
tourism
تكون
and
الدولة
how it's
ملتزمة
going
بهذا
to
الموضوع.
provide job
أكثر ما تم
opportunities,
النقاش فيه
and
هو
we
ماذا
have
ستكون الآلية باعتماد
recommended
هذه
that the
الركائز أو هذه
state
العناوين،
would
وهذا ما سيطرحه بالمستقبل خلال الأسابيع القادمة كما أشارت جريتا من خلال الاستبيان
adhere
الأونلاين الذي
to
سيتم طرحه.
such a
سيكون لنا جولات
commitment.
أخرى لن ننتهي بعد
I
من
believe
النقاشات
that
مع
we're going to
المؤسسات
have
المجتمع
more
المدني بالأردن
meetings with
والشركاء من المنظمات الدولية
NGOs and
والمؤسسات حقوق
partners
الإنسان
of
المعنية بمناصرة
international
قضايا الإعاقة.
organization and all
النقاش سيستمر بعد إطلاق الاستبيان.
human
بشكل عام هذه هي
rights
ملخص النقاشات التي
organization.
قام بها
This
الائتلاف
is
الأردني للأشخاص ذوي
briefly
الإعاقة
our
مدى
discussions we
4
have
أشهر مضت
undertaken.
تقريبا.
we have
نرجع
undertaken
نأكد أن
in the
ضرورة
previous
التشاركية بكل
period. Let
قرار،
me
ضرورة التشاركية في
underline
وضع
that
العناوين الرئيسية وضرورة
partnership is of
المشاركة
great importance in coming up with the main topics of
بأهدافها
the
الرئيسية كما
GDS
أسهمنا
in
بخمس مواضيع
order,
رئيسية. هذا
and we have
باختصار ما
adhered
حصل
to
من
the
قبل
5
الائتلاف
topics
الأردني
that had been
للإعاقة في الأردن،
underlined.
وهذه العناوين
This is
الرئيسية
our
التي تم
discussion,
النقاش.
main
لسنا هناك
topic
اجتماع قادم
discussed.
أيضا راح يكون
This
اجتمعنا
upcoming
في أكثر من
meeting.
منطقة، اجتمعنا في
We have
مناطق
held a
الشمال
number of
والوسط والجنوب،
meetings
واجتمعنا مع شركائنا كان
concerning the
اجتماع
representatives of the
وجاهي أو عبر
North,
التقنيات
the
المساعدة،
South,
وحصلنا
and
ما
we
حصلنا
have
عليه على
held
الخمس
a
عناوين
number of
الرئيسية. في
RSI
حال كان هناك
meetings
أي
and
مخرجات أخرى
webinars,
سيتم
and if there
مشاركتها مع
are
اللجنة ومع
any outputs,
المجلس
we're
ومع
going to
الزملاء
share it
الآخرين.
with the
شكرا
steering
لكم.
committee
هذا
of the
باختصار
GDS
لأعيده.
and our
يعطيكم العافية.
colleagues. Thank you very much for giving the floor. Thank you, Mr. Abdel Qadir. Thank you for your efforts. We have 10 minutes to go.
To open the floor for questions and answers. Please feel free also to submit your questions on the question and answer box. If you have any question, please raise your hand, and then we will give you the floor to speak up. You can direct your questions to the first speakers who presented on the Global Disability Summit themes, sub-themes, and the OPD's consultation results in Jordan. Please help me, colleagues, if there's anybody who raised his hand. We can also go with the questions that has been submitted on the questions and answer icon. So the first question was from Christina, and she's directing her question to Dr. Atiya, and she's asking, is the multi-country study you referred to public, and could you share it? Thank you, Christina. And there is another question for you also, Dr. Atiya. Thank you very much for the interesting presentation and for the initiative. Will this network be working on different topics, or will it be focused on DRR and emergency response? There is also another question for Dr. Atiya. Thank you for outlining the process for consultations. Are there efforts for consult with the refugees? I think this is only for Greta and for Abdel Qadir. Is there any efforts to consult with refugees and persons of other nationalities with disabilities? Can we go with this first round of questions? Dr. Atiya, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much for people's questions and interests. And definitely, as Dr. Mohammed mentioned, it's really an important point. I would first respond to the point of intersectionality between disability and refugees, or disability and gender, because definitely we found we also, for the time doesn't give us a chance. I was working as a consultant with a project called Under Siege Project, and that Under Siege Project was doing some assessment to the status of disabled refugees, and we found that they definitely face additional barriers to even access services that is maybe accessed by non-disabled people. We're talking here about education, employment, and definitely they are facing harder access to services in case of emergencies prior to and or during disasters as well. So we have lots of findings about disability when it's intersecting with refugees, and this is why actually the objective of structuring this disability inclusion stakeholder network. So within the UNDRR Arab Regional Office, they have a group of stakeholder groups. So they have stakeholder groups for youth, media, science and technology, and other stakeholder groups. And the idea of establishing the disability stakeholder group is twofold. The first is to definitely enhance the disability mainstreaming within disaster risk reduction policies, strategies, and programs, and maybe within the UN efforts, but also to intersect with all other stakeholder groups to ensure that their activities are having an inclusive nature. So this is already discussed with the other groups, and hopefully in Kuwait, at the end of October, there will be a regional platform, regional platform happening, and we are hoping that if efforts has been progressed, that we would be able to announce the disability stakeholder groups in cooperation with other stakeholder groups, definitely in cooperation with all of you. The question of related to sharing the multi-report publication, I think we have drafted that with the UNDRR, and definitely would discuss that with my colleague, Partnership Officer Tijas, who is maybe attending here as well. We would be able to discuss that and publish at least a synopsis or kind of executive report about main findings, barriers, and therefore recommendations. I hope that I've answered the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Atiya. We have also Salma Nems she raised her hand. Go ahead, please.
مرحبا راح أحكي بالعربي.
I'm going to be speaking in English.
This is Salma Nimsa. I am the first responsible for the ESQA, and recently we have been working with our colleagues in ESQA on a portfolio of the inclusivity with the people with disabilities. In terms of the social aspect, I have the first question pertinent to my own speciality. How far would the GDS takes the specificity of women with disability in terms of mainstreaming them? In terms of collection of data, people with a disability, we have scarcity in data. So when we started to compile a research on people with disabilities, we found that even if we found any data that is scarce in the first place, the only data we get is data pertinent to their employment. The second question is pertinent to our own region. I don't know how far, as long as we have Mr. Abdel Qadir, who was looking into the consultation on emergency cases, do we have a platform to focus on the implications of the war on Gaza, and if there is a possibility to discuss real intervention in order to deal with the influx of displaced people, with the people who are suffering in Gaza. We have lots of children who are becoming disabled and orphaned in one go. We pray to God that things would simmer down in Gaza, and I believe the international community should shoulder the responsibility in making this intervention if they didn't hold the responsibility in calming the situation.
إحنا ما كنا سامعينك غدير.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Salma, for your participation. It's an honor that you are with us here today. I would refer this question to Greta. Greta, can you please answer this question?
Thank you, Gadir. Absolutely. And I think there was another question from UNESCO in the chat, so I can answer both. We have under the topics gender equality, we during our last discussion of the co-hosts, we also agreed that a specific lens is needed on the rights of women and girls with disabilities. So we will make sure to be including this topic. And on the question that was made in the chat box, one comment regarded budget as one of the essential topics and one of the challenges. Thank you very much for the comment. And also on evaluation of the first two Global Disability Summit cycles, we do have a monitoring mechanism for what concerns commitments that were made. We have yearly reports that are published to monitor the implementation of commitments. And I hope this answers the questions, Kadir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Greta. We have like more 3 questions. Unfortunately, we will not be able to take more in order to be able to finish on time. We have a question from Abdulrahman Al-Mudani. Please go ahead in less than 1 minute, please. Abdulrahman, تفضل.
تسمعوني؟
Can you hear me? Yes, we can. Thank you very much. We have a question. Do we have open meeting and further consultation in order to voice more ideas? If there are no further consultation session, I would like to take this opportunity to hail the efforts exerted by Dr. Mohanad, who had assisted us in different situations. I would like also to draw the attention to a question: how far would the GDS give due attention to the mothers who are caregiver to children with disabilities, especially they are suffering from stigma, social stigma, because these women are unable to keep their work, to keep working and operating in their daily jobs, because there are a major problem in order to bring together the responsibility of their work and the responsibilities of taking care or giving care to their children with disabilities, and this these situations are driving them towards poverty. So they have only one choice: either to give care to their children with disabilities, or to abandon them and go out to earn the bread for the family. So this is a double jeopardy for women or mothers with children with disabilities. Thank you very much. I always like to hear your voice. I believe Mr. Mudni is the most active and the most effective in his field work in terms of local communities assisting people with disabilities. There is going to be a meeting that is going to run in Jordan, and you're on the top of the list of who are being invited, and we are going to discuss the relationship or the intersectionality between poverty and caregiver and families with people with disabilities. And in the Levant, we are keeping you in focus because you are one of the influencers who are going to raise major interest and major themes that are going to top the agenda of the GDS and of course of our consultation. Thank you very much, Doctor and Mr. Thank you, Mr. Abdulrahman.
تمام. هل الصوت واضح؟
Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. This is a great galaxy of experts, and I would like to hail the organization of this webinar. I have 2 points. First, the first point is pertinent to strategy for the inclusion strategy for people with disabilities, and we heard a lot about that, the importance. We have been harping on this for a long years, and up till now in the Arab world, nothing, we don't have these plans, people with disability inclusion plan, and this is always absent in our national plan. So what are the mechanisms that should be in place in order to assist the countries in order to integrate and to include the people with disabilities, because especially in big swaths of the Arab world who are suffering from crises and armed conflict. Some of the Arab world had taken commitment in order to make the strategies, but they failed to do so. Secondly, the problem with data and statistics related to people with disabilities. I had a problem I wanted to table, and maybe we'll be able to escalate this problem. We are encouraging the countries in order to adopt the Washington Group questions in the surveys, in census, and censuses, but as a matter of fact, the definitions, the definition of people with disabilities included or proposed by the Washington Group are a definition for people with extreme disabilities. And we have and according to the census in the Arab countries, we have 2 to 5% of the populations are people with disabilities. In ESQA, when we're attempting to deal with the countries in order to make statistics concerning the number of people with disabilities, I believe when we get 2% of the population who are suffering from disabilities, I believe that this is going to decrease their interest. And I believe that every country should take or should redefine and refine the definition of people with disabilities, because the definition proposed by Washington Group is not enough. Thank you very much, Dr. Ala. Dr. Atiya.
With the program, please.
شكرا جزيلا
Thank you very much. And we want to emphasize what have been said by Dr. Ala. I know that it's very good that we're talking about supporting people with disabilities in crisis situations. That is very recurrent in the Arab world, but we have a lot of efforts. We have a lot of efforts in order to give more voice and to give more attention to people with disabilities, but the financial potential is the core and crux of assisting inclusive strategies and coming up with procedures and EWS, early warning system, assisting the people with disabilities, and of course, we have varied needs of people with disabilities, especially in a crisis situation and emergency situation. We need to highlight the problem of people with disabilities in the Palestinian crisis, and we are seeing an increase or a hike in the needs of people with disabilities, especially in the Arab world, especially in the Palestinian context. Thank you very much, Dr. Atiya. Mr. Muhannad Abu Moghazi, can you give us your question or your comment in 1 minute, if that is possible? السيد مهند. Mr. Dr. Muhannad, can you hear us? We cannot hear you.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you, Muhannad. So till you fix the technical issue, we will be moving with our schedule. and
did Alessandra
مساء
unmute
الخير
him?
مسموع صوتي؟
تفضل تفضل
تفضل
تفضل ابو
تفضل أبو
مهند
مهند.
هلا
Can
مسموع.
you hear me? Yes, now we can hear you. Go ahead. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yes, yes, we can hear you. We can follow you. Go ahead, sir. No, we can hear you. My question is, what are the themes that have been agreed upon by the government in order to be included on the agenda of the GDS? And when can you provide us with this list of themes in order to review them? Thank you very much. In order to answer this, we need to say the following. The themes have been identified through consultation with IDA, different CSOs and NGOs, and the themes have been identified through the main driver is undertaken through the consultation of CSOs and NGOs, and of course we submitted these suggestions from the consultation of the CSOs and NGOs of people with disabilities, who submit them with the two co-hosts. But in terms of the commitments, I believe this is going to be answered in the next session, where Mr. Jose is going to expound on the commitments, if the commitments were fulfilled or not, very quickly, so that you wouldn't think that we have overlooked the question of Madam Selma, but we didn't give the floor to our deep friend, Mr. Mustafa Job. I believe that the Palestinian situation is going to be there, to be in focus, to be an example for the crisis faced by the people, or the double jeopardy that the people with disabilities are suffering from in a crisis situation like the situation in Gaza. And I expect that there are commitments that have been undertaken by the government, by the partners, or by donor organizations in the side events. I believe that we need to review how far were they able to fulfill this. I'm going to switch into English now.
Also, again, accommodate and make kind of diversity. My suggestion is I will speak about the declaration, then immediately I will hand over to Jose to talk about the commitments. Then we can have the questions about both, in order to save time and because they are interrelated. Briefly, the declaration is the document we are preparing. It's Amman Berlin Declaration. It's a document being developed by the three co-hosts. This declaration, we are targeting, it's a little bit different from the traditional declarations for the conferences. We are together, the three co-hosts, intending to make the GDS declaration proactive and very practical, and with communicable messages to the governments. This is why the key principle in the declaration will be something we called 15-4-15, meaning that we put in the draft declaration obligation or commitment on the signatories that they will allocate 15% of their developmental profile for the 15%, which is the average of persons with disabilities in any community. Of course, we know that the average now is 16%, according to the last updates. But again, I mean, it's not quite or widely still maybe perceived. And I mean, no doubt that 15-4-15 will make the message more, I would say, maybe easy to market and more catchy. And we started kind of bilateral and joint discussion with the governments, because they are the main stakeholders or the main target for this declaration, to sign it and to implement its content also. We are sensitizing them, and we received so far positive, I would say, answers, positive indications from governments and from, of course, the international donors. The declaration also, the second element in its focuses on the ownership, meaning that the declaration encourages emphasizing the international cooperation as key element to promote, enhance the disability rights, disability situation worldwide, but in particular in the developing country. Meanwhile, the declaration emphasizes also the responsibility for the developing countries also to mainstream the disability rights and the disability agenda within their national agenda, including budget, projects, and activities, and to be also the leaders and in the driving seat in order to implement and to secure the 15% of international cooperation or the development profile for disability issues. So many questions still on the declaration. It's under process, but again, we are in a good shape, and we hope that in November we will present something really solid and concrete in our regional pre-summit. I would stop here, and I will over to my friend Jose, the executive director for IDA, in order to give the overview about the commitments. Over to you, Jose.
Thank you, Dr. Mohanad. First of all, and on behalf of the International Disability Alliance, one of the three co-hosts together with Germany and Jordan, I want to thank our friends from Jordan, and everyone on this call for organizing such an important and informative event. I really want to also emphasize that listening into this whole webinar, it seems to me that preparations in GDS are not only on track from a co-host perspective, but clearly creating that excitement that I'm sure the three co-hosts will be always grateful for and happy about. And that is the result of the extensive work that the Higher Disability Council and its leadership, along with OPDs in Jordan, have been doing over the last 2 or 3 decades, or even more. So thanks and congratulations for that. If may I, and just talking a little bit more about the GDS commitments, we have heard today, among many things, the importance of the GDS as a way to participate in the global discussion around the implementation of the CRPD, Article 32, Article 11. Also, we have learned about what are the connections between the Global Disability Summit and the Sustainable Development Agenda. We have heard how the summit is not just an international global gathering, but also a tool for change. When Alia was presenting about the global initiative, and also when we heard from different panelists that preceded me in the floor about the themes and the different needs for persons with disabilities around the globe. But I would like to bring to your attention one more component of GDS, which I think makes GDS to be like a sustainable, permanently developing, evolving tool or cycle, and that is the GDS commitments. So basically, when we started to plan for the GDS 2025, we first did a deep analysis of the first 2 summits, the one in 2018 held in London, and the second in 2022 held virtually under the auspices of Norway and the government of Ghana. And I think we all agreed that while we acknowledge that the first summit was kind of a fair experience around creating and generating commitments towards more disability inclusion, and the second one was conducted in the middle of the COVID pandemic and different constraints were kind of preventing the three co-hosts from doing more. The GDS 2025 is, in our view, kind of the first big opportunity to take the GDS to the next level. Kind of this journey of having a first gathering back in 2018 in London to the summit next year in Berlin, where we hope that the GDS will institutionalize or be institutionalized as the tool for systemic change and further investment in the CRPD implementation. And for that, along with the high participation that we expect, with the great discussions that are happening so far, we really need to think carefully, or we thought carefully, how to have better commitments. And better commitments can be explained very easily. We know that political commitments are always nice to say, good to listen, but sometimes very difficult to implement, because those commitments that are driven only by political will are more on the side of good intentions, but rather a set of actions that we are committed to doing and that we will achieve all together. And I think that is exactly what we want to do for GDS 2025. We want to move from political will to concrete compromises. And this is our kind of first slogan for the GDS 2025. How are we going to move from political will to concrete compromises? And for that, we have developed, and I'm happy to present some of the initial ideas. More information can be found on the GDS website and will become public as we move forward. What does it mean, moving from political will to concrete compromises? The first one is that we really want commitments to be something measurable. What we don't measure, it doesn't exist. Number two is that we really want commitments to be impactful. Those like us who have been in the disability sector, we have been advocating for many years to say that we want real impact. We want to see how we can change the life of a person with disabilities. So along with the word measurement, the second keyword for the GDS Commitment 2025 framework is impact. But also, it's an impact really on the life of people with disabilities. So we really want commitments not just to be those global good intentions to say we will get together to do this, we will get together to do that. But basically, we also want commitments not only to be at the global level, but also at the regional, national, and why not to say local level, which we understand is where the real change happens for a person with disabilities. The next, for us, parameter that is very important is to understand that commitments cannot be achieved alone, right? So commitments cannot be achieved only by one stakeholder. We have learned in disability inclusion that partnership is key. And that was another innovation that we have introduced for the GDS commitment framework for GDS 2025. We expect, we are promoting, we hope to have commitments that are the result of partnership. And I think partnership not only gives the stakeholders the possibility of joining forces, but also to have more impactful commitments. There are stakeholders that have great ideas, that have done a fantastic job on one specific agenda, but to move forward that agenda, they need more resources, or they need a local or global component. So under the partnership, we really hope that GDS 2025 commitments can be the result of that joint effort around the implementation of the CRPD. So if I can summarize somehow, measurement, impact, multi-level commitments and partnership are at least some of the most important areas which we hope the GDS commitments can cover. The other thing that is important to highlight is that in the first two summits, we were focusing on commitments only for the themes that were included in the summit or in the different summits. For GDS 2025, we are going a little bit beyond that approach and really push or really promote the idea that we welcome commitments that are covering the specific themes of the GDS 2025, but that doesn't mean that if a stakeholder is planning to do something concretely on an area that maybe not be necessarily highlighted as much as it should in the summit, can still be submitting a commitment. So we really want the widest possibility to get commitments about any relevant theme. The next thing that I would say is that commitments can be even concrete, partnership-based, impactful, but we also need to acknowledge that if there is no financial compromises, it's always very hard to implement the commitment. So as Dr. Mohamed Alasse was explaining just now, this GDS declaration that aims at targeting 15% for the 50% is very much in line with the idea that the commitments that we expect to collect for GDS 2025, they should have a concrete financial compromise behind. It can be small, it can be large, depending on the partnership, depending on the size of the commitment, depending on the impact that we want to achieve. But clearly there should be always a financial compromise behind in order to resource the commitment and to transform the political will, as I said at the beginning, transforming the political will into real change, into real commitment for GDS 2025. One more thing that on behalf of the three co-hosts, we really want to convey as a key message is that we need a stronger monitoring mechanism. I think both Germany and Jordan have accepted and have acknowledged and supported from day one what we as IDA brought to the table, and that was we want commitment, but we also want a solid tracking system to make sure that what people are saying they will do actually gets done. And so we are working, and we already have available through the GDS commitment portal, a mechanism in which people can submit commitments, organizations, not people, organizations can submit commitments, can do it based on the criteria that I just mentioned, but also the commitment from the GDS Secretariat and from IDA, along with Germany and Jordan, is to have a concrete mechanism that can monitor the implementation of the commitments through different tools, annual reports, engagement of organizations of persons with disabilities with those who submitted commitments to track the implementation and to be partner in the implementation of the commitment. So I think we are really moving ahead and introducing a significant number of innovations for GDS 2025 by having not only more commitments, but better commitments, impactful, measurable, with money behind, and also with a solid tracking system. Back in June, during the Conference of State Parties to the CRPD, we launched the GDS Commitment Portal. It's an online tool that allows anyone who is planning to submit a commitments to create an account, to start exchanging with other stakeholders, to explore possibilities of partnership, to formulate a commitment, and to actually get a commitment submitted. The three co-hosts, we have agreed to be rather strict for the interest of getting good commitments in really selecting the best commitments to be presented during the summit and in parallel events that we are all planning to conduct. But I think the message in closing that I would like to convey is that, and I can speak on behalf of first IDA, but also Germany and Jordan, we want the GDS to be the biggest international gathering around disability inclusion, but also as a way of legacy, leave to the disability community a good set of commitments that actually will change the life of persons with disabilities. We encourage everyone to visit the GDS commitment portal. It's ready. You can start using it. You can start learning how previous GDS commitments look like, how you can partner with other stakeholders. There is group discussions spaces within the GDS commitment portal that you can start networking, start identifying partners for your commitments. And we are always available from the GDS Secretariat, which is a shared good among the three co-hosts, Germany, Jordan, and IDA, to provide support as you define and submit your commitments. The selection criteria for commitments are not only the ones that I mentioned, but also we want the commitments to be in accordance to CRPD standards. So we really want to make sure that all the commitments that we are going to celebrate, we have in April next year in Berlin, are basically responding to what we have as a disability community advocated for many years, and that is how to advance the implementation of the CRPD at all levels and for all persons with disabilities, with a special focus on the most marginalized groups. Thank you very much, Dr. Mohamed. It's always a pleasure to work with Jordan and Germany, and we very much looking forward to having discussions.
Thank you very much, Jose. Guys, I would like first to apologize. We won't be able, unfortunately, to take further questions. We extended 15 minutes. We tried to extend more, but it seems that it's going to be difficult. This for us means that there is a lot of interest, and having the whole meeting between 75 minimum up to 90 participants, this is really great. Thank you very much for that. Any questions, we are more than happy to answer through emails. And as Jose and Greta said, there are so many information available on the website, and there will be great opportunities also coming regionally in November in Jordan and in other regions in Africa in September, in Latin America, in order to discuss further. I would like to extend my thankfulness to HCD team, all of them, Hala, Ghadir, Haneen, everybody. I can't really count everybody, but all of them, and also for our friends, I would say, not colleagues only, in IDA and in Germany. And I'm sure that we will make a change in GDS 2025, and it's going to be really a milestone in the disability advocacy nationally, regionally, and internationally. Thank you very much, everybody. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for the interpreters and for the webinar team. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Alt F4, leave webinar button. Enter.